All right, let's go to the backdoor cut and all things NBA basketball related. Yeah, it's been a very, very interesting past few days in the NBA. Before we get to the off seasons or off court stuff, let's stick to on court activities. I have some initial headlines for the four remaining NBA playoff series, and I think once I say those, it'll kind of give you an idea of everything that's going on. We got to start with the Atlanta Hawks. Historic comeback, down 26 points last night at Philadelphia, able to come back and win the contest 109 to 106 to take a 3-2 series lead. If you saw the first quarter, complete dominance by the Sixers even into the second half. In fact, the Sixers had a pretty solid lead. Let's see, they're leading 64 to 40 heading into at halftime. Complete dominance of the contest. Joel Embiid made all 8 of his shots in the first quarter. You saw him be very aggressive in the post and even with the mid-range game. Remember, he went 0 for 12 in game 4 in the fourth quarter or in the second half in that loss to at Atlanta. So you knew that he would be aggressive and come out and be assertive. And he did that. And he finished the night with very solid numbers. You look at the stat lines, and he had 30, 39 minutes of play, 37 points, 13 rebounds, even had 5 assists. So you look at that stat line, he produced at a very high level. And I'm going to say this as well. I know he has the injured knee, and with his injury history, and his body is just. I mean, you have a man that size and moving around the court that much, and we've seen him have injuries to his legs, to his back. So anytime he is quote unquote injured, and he's missed significant time in his career at various points, you can't ignore any injury report. But you can't use it as an excuse because he's playing 35 plus minutes in all of these contests and putting up more than 35 points a game, averaging that in the series. You can't use the knee as an excuse. I've heard some national media talk about that. Oh, he's injured. Look, he's stepping out on the court and he's producing at a tremendous level. So you can't use that excuse for his underperformance. And we'll get to some underperformance for him in the second half. But first half, as I said, the Sixers were playing really well and rolling. And then even in the second half, had that 26-point lead. But you just saw in that second half the Hawks continue to chip away. And let's get to the Hawks and give them credit and highlight some of those guys before we get to Philadelphia because I could do an entire hour on the issues of the Sixers. Before we get to that, let's get to Atlanta. Trae Young, once again, 39 points, 7 assists, played 40 minutes in the contest. And I saw a tweet, and it makes appropriate sense. And I've been saying this since the very beginning of his tenure with the Hawks. He's going to be compared to Luka Doncic, the tremendous player for the Dallas Mavericks. Remember when on the draft night, the Hawks drafted Luka Doncic, traded that pick to with Dallas for Trae Young, and got another pick as well, which turned out to be Cam Reddish. And Reddish has been dealing with injury issues, so it's kind of hard to make that assessment. Luka is a tremendous player, MVP candidate, All NBA first teamer, well deserved. His accolades are awesome. Trae Young is a very good player as well, and I think both situations it worked out for both teams and both players. If you had a one-on-one, who would I pick? As far as a player, I'd take Luka, but Trae is right there in that discussion. And I think he has his maturation with the Hawks in his third year has been the thing I've been most impressed with. Yes, you see the 39 points and hitting a lot of floaters, but his ball control has been very strong. In game 4, only 4 turnovers as a team in that contest for Atlanta. They had 11 turnovers in game 5. So you know they wouldn't be in single digit turnovers every playoff game. But you see him have more control. Yes, he still likes to take the logo 3 pointers from 30 plus feet away. He had one last night when the Hawks were in their comeback attempt that he missed and really could have hurt their momentum. So he still has that in him that you say, oh, don't take that 3. He makes a lot of them. But he has been much better with the ball distribution and limiting the turnovers. And last night you saw him have control of that at least the second half, really take control. of the distribution for Atlanta. John Collins, 19 points, 11 rebounds. It's a contract year for John. He's wants a maximum deal at the end of the season. He's eligible for some of that. He's playing really, really well for him. I know Clint Capella, 6 points, 8 rebounds, and Embiid had a very big first half, but second half wise made it tough for Embiid, a limit to some opportunities for him. And I know you're saying, well, Embiid still scored 30 plus points in the contest, not the best defensive effort, but still, just being a big body and being a solid contributor for Atlanta. Big off the bench moments for Danilo Gallinari, 16 points and 8 rebounds. Lou Williams, 15 points. Atlanta's been looking to get that contribution from Lou Williams all season since the trade with the Clippers for Rondo, or they traded away Rondo and brought in Lou Williams. It's been up and down for Lou in his tenure with the Hawks. This is second time with the franchise, but last night was a really big moment for them. He had a lot of those points in the second half, really helped lead that comeback effort and that charge, for the Hawks. But just a very big win for Atlanta, who now leads the series 3-2, can close out the series tomorrow night on June 18th at home against the Sixers. Let's get to Philadelphia. As much as I talk about the Hawks and a big win for them and maybe a top five franchise win in history, and look it up, especially since they've been in Atlanta. I know they won the title in St. Louis way back in the day with Bob Pettit and Lenny Wilkens and all that stuff. But since they've been in Atlanta, it may be a top five all time win, just looking at the circumstances. But you can't ignore the Sixers blowing a 26-point lead at home and saying that wasn't a major factor in that. I'm just going to go down the list of everyone. And then there's the question is always, who can you blame? Do you want to blame Doc Rivers, blame Embiid? Do you want to blame Simmons, even Tobias Harris? They can all get it. Trust me, there's not 100% one person blame for it. But we'll start with the heavy hitters and then kind of go down from there. We'll start with Doc Rivers. He's the head coach, the leader of the team, the one who sets everything up. I think this is an indictment, not necessarily of last night, and he has a really checkered history of blowing a lot of leads. He's the only coach in history of the NBA to have his teams lead a series 3-1 and blow them. And we've seen him do that or lose a series. And we've seen that with 3 stops. Happened in Orlando against Detroit, happened with the Clippers, I believe, against the Rockets. And then last year we saw that happen in the bubble with the 70s. Well, no, it happened with the Clippers twice. I take that back. It happened with last year with the Clippers when they blew that 3-1 series lead to Denver. And in each of those 3 games that they lost, games 5, 6, and 7, they had second half leads of double digits. So we've seen Doc Rivers lose a lot of these contests, multiple game 7s under his tenure. Now he's won an NBA championship with Boston. You can't take that away from him. But a very dubious history. And he's I think he may be top 4 or 5 light guys in all of the NBA. I've spoken with them. Very knowledgeable, likable, good personality, very honest guy with the media and I think with others. So he's very likable. So it's tough, I think, for a lot to criticize him, but you got to look at the credentials and the record. And as I said, if he was fired tomorrow, he's not going to be fired by Philadelphia, but you would have Portland, Orlando, all these franchises, New Orleans, go fighting over each other to bring him into the franchise because you're going to get stability as far as the regular season goes. You're going to get accountability for the most part, and I'll get to maybe the accountability not being as much as it should be. But you're going to get a guy who's going to win if you have a good roster. It's going to put you in the playoffs, get you a solid regular season, and that's what a lot of these NBA franchises want. Now, to get to a championship level, that's a different story. I put the onus on Doc Rivers, a part of it on him, for not making Ben Simmons and others accountable throughout the regular season leading up to this moment. They were not accountable enough to make Ben Simmons, and it goes on Simmons himself. He's a grown man, and we'll get to Simmons specifically in a moment. But it's the responsibility of the head coach to put his team in the best position to win. And that includes making sure your players are contributing in a major way. And with Rivers, we've seen him all throughout the regular season ignore and maybe he's doing it behind closed doors, but I'm not really seeing it translate onto the court. Not making Embiid accountable for his conditioning to play a full game. Not making Ben Simmons accountable for his lack of ability making free throws, lack of ability to even attempt field goal attempts late in contest. And you see the Sixers not doing that at all or not executing in that way. And last night was just the culmination of all of that stuff. You look at look at the Sixers that pride themselves on defense, and they have three guys on their roster who have been all NBA defenders. Even this past was Simmons as a first team all defensive player, wanting to campaign to be the defensive player of the year. Yet Trae Young has had 30 plus points in pretty much every game of this series and has dominated the backcourt. And what's going on there? You have Embiid, all defensive player, Dwight Howard, who's multiple defensive player of the year, George Hill, solid defender. You have these guys who are supposed to be solid defenders, and they give up 40 points in the fourth quarter to Atlanta last night. That can't happen. So the coaching has to be acknowledged as a problem. Even Embiid, 37 points, 13 rebounds. You look at that big night, big performance. Fourth quarter or second half, and yes, he was him and as Seth Curry. Seth Curry had 36 points. Got to give him some respect. 36 points, 7 rebounds in the contest. Those are only two guys to score in the second half for Philadelphia. So you look at that. Where is Embiid? Where is his errors, or how does he take some of the blame for the loss? He was not performing at the same optimal level in the second half. And then furthermore, in the fourth quarter, when the Hawks were up three, and Embiid did a post up, got fouled. Embiid shoots better than 80% from the free throw line in the regular season and the postseason. He misses two consecutive free throws. You can't have that happen when you're down three with less than a minute left in the contest. So he put the Sixers in a bad spot. But two guys who really deserve a lot of criticism, Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris, 4 points, 4 rebounds, in 38 minutes of play. He is compensated and looked at to be a superstar. If you look at his salary and you really look at how he's even performed in a regular, not even a superstar, but a solid contributor. He's been a 20-point scorer and good all-around player for the Sixers all throughout the regular season. Postseason has been up and down, but you cannot go an entire playoff game and only give you 4 points. That can't happen in any circumstance. So when and especially when you see Embiid fatiguing and Ben Simmons, him not whatever's going on with him, that's the moment that you step up and you give double digit. You get to that 20-point range. I mean, Seth Curry scoring 36 points. That's very, very good. But Tobias Harris should be the guy giving you that type of production. So he deserves a amount of blame for it. But Ben Simmons is the biggest culprit, really, I think, in this contest and really through the struggles of the Sixers in this series against Philadelphia. Only making 4 out of 14 free throw attempts in the contest. First guard in NBA playoff history to miss 10 free throws in a contest. That can't happen. And look, do I like the intentional fouls on Simmons? From a viewing standpoint, no, because it slows down the game, it clunks it up, and the flow is not strong. But if you're Nate McMillan and the Hawks coaching staff, brilliant move because he is not making free throws, and it slows down the Sixers offense, which usually runs best on the fast break, especially on Simmons when he's leading the break, or when Embiid can get the ball and get himself in a nice spot for a nice isolation situation. When you foul Simmons, none of that can happen, or it's less likely to happen. So that's smart on their part. The fact that he's only attempted, I think, 4 field goal attempts in the second half of the last two games, which have included the Sixers blowing or losing double-digit leads in the second half, when your point guard can't shoot, really refuses to shoot, even a mid-range game, let alone three-pointers, and misses free throws, that's a very bad spot to be in. And I think with Simmons, and I've said this since he came into the league, he's been entitled and given so much so young, What is the motivation to get better? And the same thing with Giannis to a lesser degree, or even to a more degree, because Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks, and we'll get to the Bucks in a moment because they have a very important game tonight. Two-time MVP, All NBA, maximum contract salary, yet he still lacks a consistent outside game to complement his inside game. We know his defense has been defensive player of the year. It's a two-time MVP. Why are you going to work on your jump shot? Ben Simmons is not as good as Giannis, but it's kind of the same deal. He was named Rookie of the Year. He's been given a max contract for as much as he can make right now. He's been named All NBA. He's been named All Defensive Player or All Defensive First Team. He gets the accolades of being treated like a superstar, not only by the fans and the media, but also the Sixers organization. Why is he going to work on his mid-range game? Why is he going to work on a decent post-up game? The motivation is not there. Now, internally, you would hope he would have that motivation to be a better player, but you would consistently hear the excuses of, oh, he doesn't need an outside shot. Oh, he doesn't need to do this. Yes, he does. The NBA game requires you as a point guard, especially when you have the team structured like it is, their team, to have a player that can hit an outside shot to make things happen. Do I expect him to become Seth Curry, or shooting all the 3 pointers? No. Do I expect him to be Dame Lillard or Trae Young shooting 35-foot 3 pointers? No. But you can't give me a mid-range game. We look at Chris Paul, who has not been a good 3-point shooter in his career, but he finds a way to make that mid-range jumper just inside the 3-point line, near the key. If he can make that shot consistently, that would alleviate so many issues that he has. He has not done that throughout his career, and he has not even attempted to improve on that through his career. We saw when Brown was there, the previous head coach, who would tell him to shoot 3-pointers, to take jumpers, to make that effort. If you miss them, it's okay. He did not do that. Now you see him going entire quarters of games without one field goal attempt. And that guy is making $25-30 million a year. You can't have that with your supposedly franchise player. And last night was just an abomination of that. And I don't know if it's going to improve now. I don't know if he'll ever going to improve, because I just don't think he has it in him to make those necessary steps. Now, should be kicked out of the league? No. There's a place for him in the NBA. I just think that the way the Sixers are trying to use him as this point forward or point guard. I mean, he's 6'10", so he looks like a forward, but he's really their point guard in that role. It's not going to work out for him in that capacity. So the Sixers are an expensive, not well built team. And do they get past the Hawks in this series? They possibly can. I can see them winning game 6 and then winning game 7 at home. But do they get past Brooklyn or even the Milwaukee? I highly doubt that's going to happen. And that game last night, was pretty much the window closing, I think, on championship aspirations in Philadelphia from what we saw in that contest. The other game last night that was of interest was Kawhi Leonard scoring 37. Not Kawhi Leonard. See, and I'll get to that in a moment because I put that in my notes, and I'm used to seeing Kawhi Leonard produce these type of numbers. It was Paul George who scored 37 points with 16 rebounds to lead the Clippers to a 119-111 win at Utah to take a 3-2 series lead in that contest. Now, Kawhi Leonard was out for the game, and he's going to probably be out for the rest of that Western Conference semifinal with the knee injury. But Paul George really stepped up last night and had maybe the best game of his career, circumstances considered, in that contest. 37.16 rebounds. That's a big night for him to give the Clippers a 3-2 lead. The Clippers are a team, it seems like when adversity hits, they really step up. We saw in the first round, lose the first 2 games at home against the Mavericks in the first round series. Then they went to Dallas and won 2 games. You think, okay, now they got things together. They lose game 5 at home to Dallas, down 3-2. What does that mean? They have to win the last two games, including one in Dallas in Game 6 and Game 7 at home, just to advance the next round. They find a way to do that. Kawhi Leonard, big performances there. Then they have this series where they don't look good through the first four games. Up and down, inconsistency. And then Kawhi Leonard has the knee injury. And you think, wow, the Clippers are done. Utah is playing very well. Donovan Mitchell playing at a superstar level, going to Utah, maybe the toughest place to play, best home court advantage in the NBA. And they put up that type of performance in a winning effort last night. Reggie Jackson, 22 points at the point guard spot. Very big for him. Patrick Beverly not getting as many minutes, not in the starting lineup anymore. Very good move by Ty Lue, the head coach. Marcus Morris, 25 points in 40 minutes of play, giving that offensive production miss with the absence of Kawhi Leonard. Just a really good effort for the Clippers, who you have to figure have the advantage right now in this series. Now, Utah, they can still come back, and they need Mike Conley back in a major way just to get the ball out of Donovan Mitchell's hands. Now, Mitchell is a very good scorer. He can give you 35 to 40 points in the contest as the point guard, as the lead guard. But what Conley being in the lineup, you saw him evolve his game this year, and even in this postseason, being off the ball. I don't know what Conley's leg injury, if he's going to come back, but they need him to come back in a major way if they really want to compete in this series. Because Mitchell's going to get his points. He's going to get his 25 to 30 points and everything like that. But you just look at the set of this lineup, the Clippers look like they have the advantage. Now watch the Clippers lose Game 6 tonight by double digits and be out or Friday night and have to play a Game 7. That's just the way the Clippers roll. They play with their food, as some say. But we'll see what happens in that series. We have Game 6 tonight with Brooklyn and Milwaukee, and it's getting to the point where you have to wonder where Milwaukee is as a franchise. They played a really bad game in Game 5. And look, I know Giannis had 34 points and 12 assists or 12 rebounds, and you're like, wow, that's a really good effort from him. But even they were leading by a decent amount at halftime. But the problem is that their offensive execution was not what it should have been. They should have pounded the ball inside. Oh, two things they should have done. One, you got to get the ball inside more. You have Brook Lopez, who I know likes to shoot three-pointers, but you have a decided size advantage in the game. You have to get the ball inside more and not settle for three-pointers. And I know the Bucks shot a lot of three-pointers and had a pretty solid efficiency rate in the regular season, but you have to make adjustments and change things in the playoffs, and they did not do that. The second thing you have to do, or should have done, James Harden, All NBA, MVP of the league at point of his career, he's not right. He could barely move on the court. The fact he played 46 minutes is amazing to me with that hamstring, which is not right. And the fact that offensively they did not take advantage of him and seek him out to score on him. We already know defensively he's average at best, and even calling him average may be generous. But the fact that the man cannot move laterally, and we saw one or two sequences in the game when Drew Holiday was able to drive right past him and get to the basket for layups. The fact they did not do that more often in the game offensively, as far as Bucks go, is baffling. And then Giannis had a post-up opportunity with about a minute and a half left in the contest. He post up hard and got a one-on-one situation. He shoots a fadeaway jumper against Harden, who he has at least 6 inches on, weighs more than, and also Harden cannot move properly. And they did not take advantage of any of those situations. That's on Coach Bud. That's also on the players, and someone had to say something to make those adjustments in game. That did not happen. And look, Kevin Durant, awesome performance, 49 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists, triple double, played all 48 minutes. I mean, that was an all time performance for him, and he's getting the accolades that he deserves for that. But Milwaukee had a very big hand in losing that contest. Now they got to turn around and play tonight in game six. I think Milwaukee can still find a way to win this game. I think you have to worry about Durant playing all 48 minutes in game five, and will he be able to give that type of production in game six? Harden playing 46 minutes on that hamstring. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold up consistently and play those many minutes in this game. So I'm picking the Bucks to win tonight in this especially being at home. But man, you got to be very disappointed if you're Milwaukee because this should have been a closeout opportunity for them tonight instead of trying to win tonight to keep the playoffs going for them. Chris Paul is in COVID protocol with the Phoenix Suns. I don't we don't know. I guess he's been vaccinated, and so I think the protocols are not as extensive as they've been in the past for non-vaccinated people. Remember, we've seen with players who test positive for COVID having to be in isolation and away for the team for up to 2 weeks. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with a player that's been vaccinated. I guess he's vaccinated. We saw some media reports, including Jalen Rose, saying that he is vaccinated. I don't think I've seen Chris Paul come out and say that directly. And I mean, it's his privacy, and there's some HIPAA issues with that, that it is his body, and he does have to disclose everything as far as that goes. But he could be asymptomatic, or I'm not a doctor with this whole COVID thing. We're all figuring it out as it goes. But the first game one, I think at the earliest, can be on Sunday. So he's probably going to miss that game. But I would not be surprised if he comes back for game two or three. So I think that it's an issue to be aware of because he doesn't score as many points as Devin Booker, and he doesn't get as many rebounds as DeAndre Ayton, but he's their most valuable player. And he had a tour de force in that Denver series, and that was a very big moment for him as far as that goes. So if the Suns do need him, if they have championship aspirations, and I think they'll get him back in the series sooner rather than later, all things considered. But as I said, I'm not a doctor. If he ends up having to sit out half the series in the game three or four, and either Utah or the Clippers can jump out to a big series lead, that changes a lot of things. And before we get to the coaching news, a note to LeBron James, who we've been I'm not critical of, but we try to have a very objective view of him on and off the court because he's a very polarizing figure. He does a lot of good. There's some missteps which are expected in any human being in the world. I think that his tweet about the schedule causing a lot of these injuries that we've seen from all of these series, and we can go down the list of all the injured players that have been impacted, at least in the regular season, or late in the regular season, even into the playoffs. I mean, I'm just looking down the list right here. With Philadelphia, we see Joel Embiid with his knee injury. The Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, his knee. Donovan Mitchell's missed time late in the regular season. He had a foot injury or a leg injury. Mike Conley, he's dealt with stuff. Well, Brooklyn, we've seen Durant miss time in the season. He's been back for the playoffs. But Kyrie Irving and James Harden being hampered by injuries in the playoffs. Jamal Murray, I mean, it was in the regular season, but obviously that altered a lot of things for the Nuggets. So you go down the list. Jaylen Brown, that was a broken wrist. I don't know if that relates to that could happen anywhere. And I think, and that's the theme I'm trying to say. One, injuries are part of sports. It's unfortunate. Do I want to see all those players at full strength competing at the highest level? Of course I do. And I think unless you're a fan of a specific team, maybe you're not too heartbroken if the opponent's best player is out with injury because you want to see your team win, and that may make things easier. Me personally, I don't really root for a specific team. I have supported the Knicks in the past, and because I'm from New York, and I like to see Atlanta do well. because we're based in Atlanta. We have a lot of friends who are Atlanta people. And I grew up in Brooklyn, literally, like about 15 minutes away from Barclays Center. Well, 20 minutes. Traffic can be a pain, but about 15, 20 minutes away from Barclays. So I like to see Brooklyn on a national stage do very well. But if either of those teams win or lose, it doesn't affect my day in any way. So I look at things very objectively from an overarching thing. So I want to see all the players be healthy and compete at the highest level. But injuries are a part of sports. It's going to happen. And I don't know if the schedule has something to do with it, because yes, there was a quick turnaround from last year, from being in the bubble, and in that format, you had a shorter off season, and then you only played 72 games this year, so instead of your normal 82 games in a regular season. So a lot, and LeBron got injured as well. Can't forget him, and Anthony Davis. Obviously, he dealt with the Achilles injury and then a groin injury, which ultimately put him out of the playoffs and really sealed the fate, for the Lakers. So all these injuries. So it happened to LeBron as well with his ankle sprain and other injury. So it affected him and his Lakers team directly. So I understand his perspective on it, and I can see where he's coming from. But we saw a lot of players take time off this year or rest and load management, manage themselves and everything like that. I just think that the NBA, you have bodies that are big and strong and athletic running up and down the court. You run the equivalent of half a marathon every single night, trying to go up and down the court, back and forth, doing lateral cuts on your lower body. Injuries are going to happen. You can have a 40 game season with you play once a week and you have long breaks in a regular off season. These injuries are still going to happen. I think, does Kawhi Leonard still get injured? Possibly. LeBron James, does he still get injured? Yes, in those situations. I don't want to see it. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of sports. And I know LeBron looks at himself as the voice of the players, because his platform is the largest, not only in the NBA, but one of the largest in the world. You look at his Twitter, social media presence. When he says something, it carries a lot of presence and a lot of weight. So I think he's looking at his fellow players and they're dealing with injury issues. Yes, and he's trying to talk for them, but I think it goes beyond just not the circumstances of the regular season schedule and the off season. So I wanted to say that I acknowledge what he's saying. I just don't agree with it. As far as coaching news goes, and we'll get more into this as the playoffs move on, because there will be some more hirings and firings, because I think we're going to see some of these teams that lose in the playoffs at some point. You may see Milwaukee have a new coach. The way things are looking right now, that's probably the only one. I think all the other teams, well, in the Hawks, if they don't bring back Nate McMillan, and they should bring him back, they played really well under him. But stranger things have happened. They might open up that coaching search, and we'll see if something goes on there. But we've seen Stan Van Gundy already out in New Orleans. They're going to have three new head coaches in 3 years with Zion Williamson. Remember, David Griffin was hired 2 years ago and Alvin Gentry was the coach already there, and they drafted Zion Williamson. And Zion's rookie year, injury issues, unable to play a lot or consistently. Alvin Gentry, after year one, he's out. You bring in Stan Van Gundy. He signed to a long-term, multi-year deal. You figure, okay, this is the guy that's going to be with Zion for the next 3, 4 years at least. Help him develop and build and become a major player. He's out after one season. Now we're hearing rumblings that Zion Williamson and his family, along with Brandon Ingram, were not happy with Stan Van Gundy and maybe his coaching style or his approach to things. The reality is you're going to have a third new head coach in that franchise in 3 years with Zion Williamson, a guy that some are saying could be a franchise changer. I don't see it. I think his skills are very good, but I don't trust his body lasting consistently in a style of play. I don't think it's going to be we're not going to see him play a 15-year career. I want to see it, but I don't think you're going to see him pull a LeBron or even a Carmelo Anthony, guys that are playing in the league 15 years and LeBron approaching year 17 and 18. He's not going to be that guy. Now, his 5, 6 year peak might be awesome and very strong, and maybe he can get to a championship level, but I think that's going to have to be sooner rather than later. You're not going to see him out there playing at a high level at 32, 33 years old. It's not going to happen. So now you're going to bring in a third head coach under him. I just don't know what the situation is with New Orleans, what you're trying to achieve there. It's just not the right way to approach things as far as developing maybe a top 5 or 6 player under the age of 25 in the league. But we'll see what happens with New Orleans. Scott Brooks, he's out in Washington. That's a tough gig. You have two guys, Embiid and Westbrook, high salaries, high usage rate guys, and just not much else. What's your peak in Washington? Maybe be a playoff team. We saw him be in a play-in situation this past year. But you have two high salary guys. You're probably going to see, more than likely, Beal is going to be with another team after this offseason. You may even see Westbrook with a new team this offseason. So there's just not a lot of stability there and what's going on, with Washington. So I don't know what direction they go as well. We'll see what happens there.